Arsenal have beaten Chelsea by 1-0, and while it is a fantastic result for the Gunners, it highlighted and exposed a major tactical problem for Chelsea, a problem that we're going to be discussing and analysing in this video right now. If this game highlighted anything, it was the fact that Chelsea are absolutely toothless without Cole Palmer. They physically cannot go forwards. They tactically cannot do anything. And right now, we're going to be breaking down how Arsenal exposed that and amplified that to no end. Arsenal set up in their 4-4-2 defensive shape. I've got them here. You've got Marino onto Reece James. You've got Odegaard onto Caicedo. Now, immediately, that's a big problem because Reece James isn't necessarily a central midfielder. He's not going to be playing those progressive passes into midfield. I feel for him a little bit. So, because he's not able to do that, you're relying quite a lot on Caicedo. And if you're man-marking players from an Arsenal perspective, it's really easy to try and cut out those passing lanes. This puts a lot of emphasis on your back three. It becomes a back three because you've got Marc Cucurella holding that width out on this left-hand side for Chelsea. This allows Christopher and Nkunku to move in field, and it gives Chelsea their attacking five. But just going back to that three at the back formation that Enzo Maresca really likes, that box formation that he wants to utilise, it puts a lot of emphasis on Fofana, Colwill and Badiashile, because essentially Arsenal are asking Chelsea, go on, try to break through us. And they can't because of the marking players of Declan Rice onto Enzo Fernandez and Thomas Partey onto Christopher Nkunku. The moment you take these two players out of the game, you're essentially forcing Chelsea to go out wide. And you go towards Jadon Sancho and Marc Cucurella. Now, Cucurella, in this particular example, has a really tough time trying to beat Jurrien Timber because Enzo Maresca doesn't necessarily want Chelsea to lose the ball. It's almost not encouraging risk. And if you don't encourage risk, you don't encourage those 1v1 situations. Jadon Sancho had exactly the same problem. And all that it ended up resulting in is Chelsea regressing backwards towards their own goal and entering this phase of the pitch once more. They really struggled to get the ball into these attacking eights. They really struggled to get the ball into the striker. And whenever they did, Arsenal always managed to suffocate them and snuff out any kind of danger. This then gave Arsenal the opportunity to have good counter-attacks, good transitional plays, of which they didn't necessarily capitalise upon, but the threat was always there. And I never felt that Chelsea had that threat to begin with. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. You currently have Chelsea building. You've got Reece James on the ball right now. You've got Mikel Merino, who's willing to press up onto Reece James because he's more than happy to do that. But what else have you got? You've got Fofana, Colwill and Badiashile all without the ball, all without any kind of pressure. And that's because Arsenal don't mind if they have the ball. They mind if these two do, though. They mind if the Chelsea midfielders have the ball because they are concerned about them being able to progress through the lines. If you have these three have the ball, that's perfectly fine. But notice the positioning of Thomas Partey, who is here, and Declan Rice, who is here, marking Enzo Fernandez and Christopher Nkunku almost out of the game. You've got the likes of Cucurella out on that far side, really holding that width. He's doing a good job for his side, but he's always going to be pressured by the likes of Jurrien Timber. You've also got Pedro Neto, who's trying to drop a little bit deeper to receive the ball. He's always marked by William Saliba, which means that Reece James has no option, really. He has no option other than to find one of these three and try to rotate the ball around, because that's what Enzo Maresca wants to do. He wants to maintain possession and not give away opportunities on the transition, which means that a pass raking over the top, even if he was to play it, is not favoured. And the fact that it's not favoured always puts Arsenal in the ascendancy. To fix this, you need better movement. You need risk takers. You need the ability for that system to start to move these Arsenal players around, overloads on different channels. This is something that Chelsea really struggle with because they are far too stagnant. Enzo Fernandez is asking for the ball, but he's currently had his passing lane be completely exposed. He can't receive that pass. It's just not possible. You've got Christopher Nkunku. He's not necessarily making a run. All of these Chelsea players are more or less static, and that is a huge, huge problem. And then you look at the base of their midfield. Reece James is not going to be able to play a line-breaking pass. I really like him as a player. I think he's top quality, but he's just not. You've got Moises Caicedo. He is an unbelievable destroyer. He's a fantastic all-round midfielder. But asking him to not only be the destroyer, but also the creator at the base of the midfield for the side is asking far too much, in my opinion. All in all, this really exposed Chelsea from an attacking point of view, and it left so many questions to be answered. Questions that, as I said, I'm not sure Enzo Maresca at this point in time can answer. Let's talk about that attacking midfield four, because I've mentioned how Chelsea struggle to really break teams down, and I've also mentioned why they are toothless without Cole Palmer, but let's just really look into that for a second. Cole Palmer would play in and around this area with Enzo Fernandez. Now you might say, well, if Cole Palmer is in the side, not a lot is going to change, and you are correct to a certain degree. But where Cole Palmer really changes this situation is he is always willing to take a risk, and that is incredibly crucial in this kind of system. You require individuals to make really high quality, high tempo passes to try and break the lines. Time after time again, Chelsea either didn't have the quality or they didn't have the belief within themselves to play these intricate passes. And when you have a side that is lacking in confidence, not believing in themselves, and you have a side like Arsenal that is really confident in their defensive shape, they are the real standout defensive unit for a reason. You need confidence to come up against them to be able to break these lines, to get your wingers into positions where they can have 1v1 situations, to be able to get those intricate plays, those 1-2s between your striker and your 8s. And if you don't have that, you're always going to struggle to progress. Where Cole Palmer separates himself, it's not just through his quality on the ball, but it's also the confidence that he has within himself to be able to find that pass into Neto, to be able to find that pass into Sancho. And even if he can't, he's always willing to take a high quality shot onto goal to even get an opportunity. This is something that Chelsea seriously lacked, and without Palmer in the side, it emphasised and exposed a massive problem for them going forwards. A problem that I'm not sure tactically Enzo Maresca, at this current point in time, knows how to fix. Finally, before we end, let's take a look at the goal. The goal that separated both of these sides, and Arsenal will absolutely take this, not only because it's their first set piece in a number of attempts, but also because they're really struggling to score goals themselves at this point, and they will have any kind of opportunity to get a goal. And in Mikel Merino, they found someone who not only has an aerial presence, but also seems to have an eye for a goal, something that Arsenal are really happy to have at this point. So, you've got Mikel Merino running towards the front post. Notice the positioning of Christopher Nkunku. Now, this is really key because we need to remember his positioning because he does move before the ball gets whipped in. You've got the ball about to be crossed into the box. The second thing we need to look at is the positioning of Sanchez. Now, I don't think Sanchez is necessarily at fault for this goal, but notice how he's so fixated with these group of players. Notice how he really wants to get away from them. And I think that almost diverts his attention away somewhat and stops himself from being able to set himself when the ball comes into the box. So as it gets whipped in, you've got Christopher Nkunku, and what ends up happening is he just notices that there's a little bit of a gap, and that forces him to drop. Let's just go back and see that. Notice the positioning he's got here. He just moves ever so slightly from here backwards a little bit, and that gives Mikel Merino the opportunity right here, who's being marked by Reece James, to move into this zone just in front of Christopher Nkunku. As he moves in front of this zone, Merino tries to flick the ball on. Now, he's not trying to score from here. He's just trying to keep the play alive, to keep the moment going. But in doing so, it comes off of the top of his head in such a way that it loops over the top of Robert Sanchez. Now, going back to what I said about Sanchez, I don't think it's his fault, but I think the fact that he's so fixated with this group of players in front of him means that he's not able to properly set himself, which really puts him at a disadvantage to begin with. As I said, it loops over him and it goes in for Arsenal. But as I said, they did a brilliant job of not only exposing Chelsea's real attacking problems, but also managing to get a goal themselves when they're struggling in that department as well. A thoroughly deserved win for Arsenal, who I thought generally dominated the game. But of course, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. What do you make of Arsenal, and what do you make of Chelsea's massive problems? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.